Hey guys, so today I came across this video where they got like four feminists on the panel talking about trans rights. Yeah, this got to be interesting. Let's check this stuff out.
That's becoming increasingly divisive. Is prioritising trans inclusion detrimental to women's rights? We've seen the NHS and charities such as Cancer Research UK and Joe Cervical Cancer Trust making a push to use more gender neutral terms like everyone with a cervix, people who menstruate, menstruators, non men, rather than women. Sally,
Jesus.
what's your thoughts on gender neutral language?
Well, if we go back to the original question, which is prioritising trans rights negatively affecting women? Well, yes, if you're prioritising it, in my opinion, yes, it is going to negatively affect women's rights because you can't prioritise one or the other. You have to look at both of them in tandem. We live at a time of the Me Too movement. We have rising violent porn, rising violence against women. There's such a preoccupation with worrying about trans activists that I think people are rushing into making quick and rash decisions. And you see that in the language that is on the NHS website and on some cancer charity websites. I understand why they've done it. They want to include non-binary people. They want to include trans men. But why not say that? Women and non-binary and trans men.
Hmm.
You can't just erase
She
women.
got boogers on her
It's
nose.
inaccurate,
Oh
and
God.
especially in healthcare, it needs to be accurate.
Okay. So Zoe, do you think there's a way that everyone can be included in some of the language and women not sort of erased?
I think we're looking at this from the wrong angle, to be honest. Women and trans people do not have to see their rights as in opposition. Feminists don't all think one thing. I definitely don't agree with, so much of the
Most feminists think the same thing. It's all the same. The same talking points, the same beliefs, the same ideology, the same hatred for men, the same nonsense, patriarchy, all that rubbish. It's all the same. They're all the same. Don't let her fool you.
anti-trans language is about this idea of a feminist, uniting a whole spectrum of opinion, a single opinion in which trans people are here and women are here. No feminists I know think like that. And never in my lifetime has feminism ever been united on anything, actually. I mean, we think this is bad.
They've been united in the hatred of men. I can tell you that. Yeah, patriarchy theory. They all believe in that shit. All of them.
You should have seen it in the 80s when there was the kind of all men are rapists debate. There was genuinely no prospect for feminists to ever agree. And we never did agree. But we just moved on and did other stuff. Specifically on the language, you've got to bear in mind, I don't think, again, no woman I've ever met would mind being called a woman or a person with a womb. It's like, who cares? It's not a deal breaker. It's not a big deal.
What? What? You think women are okay being called non-men? Jesus Christ. She's one of them bad, really bad, not jobs feminists. Like the worst kinds of feminists. Like she's one of them. Jesus Christ.
Ellie, you've written a lot about feminism. Do you think feminism is divisive now, more so than ever, particularly over gender neutral language?
Well, feminism as a label of feminist isn't particularly relevant to most women. There's countless surveys that show that, huge percentages of people are up for gender equality. They think men and women should be equal and all the rest of it, but they don't attach themselves to the F word. So discussions about feminism and how relevant it is actually irrelevant. Most people aren't interested. People don't vote for the Women's Equality Party, blah, blah, blah. It's not a thing that a lot of women are interested in. However, I think probably, I'm a bit shocked at the gaslighting going on, which is that to suggest that women shouldn't be that bothered if they're defined by their bodily functions. I mean, that is sexism of old, that women were defined by the fact that they had periods and had to be locked away, the fact that they had babies and so were, pushed into a certain pigeonhole of engaging in life. And this is the kind of language that's being reheated in the contemporary format. If someone called me a menstruator, I'd slap them in the gob because that is not
And
how
not all women menstruate either.
God, I mean, if you'd slap somebody in the gob for saying that, I wouldn't want to share a toilet with you.
Well, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you shouldn't, because I actually don't think it's funny. I think that there is a kind of a history of women being kept separate from public life on the basis of us being defined by our bodily functions, and this is what's now being, again, kind of reheated in a sort of progressive format. But I think, you know, to come to the question about whether or not trans rights does, having a view on trans rights does mean prioritizing over women. It depends what you mean by trans, because I think, you know, most people understand that there are trans women, there are trans men. There's no problem with that. I think I'm very proud of the fact we live in a country.
This woman sounds based. I thought all of them were feminists. I mean, the one on the left kind of sounds, you know, like one of them ladies, like, okay, let's all be happy together. Let's all, live and let live. And then the other one on the far right is, not job feminist. And the one in the middle kind of sounds, I'm guessing, anti-feminist, or she sounds really based. Yeah, I thought they were all feminists. I swear to God. I thought, okay.
Country where, for the most part, people are pretty tolerant about that, about how people want to dress, what they want to call themselves, all the rest of it. I think you're doing a real disservice to staff in the NHS, by the way, because from my experience talking to them, most of them are as sympathetic as they can be to people with different identities. And unfortunately, not trans people, because most trans people don't want anything to do with this debate, but certain influential trans activists are turning that position of women wanting to define their own terms and their own selves as something hateful and problematic. I mean, literally this morning, Oxfam has released a video set with a grimacing, hag, witch-faced woman with a badge that says TERF on it, pointing at a group of LGBTQI+ people. The demonization, I've never seen such demonization of women, in the long history of sexism. It's quite remarkable.
Can I come back on a couple of things? Firstly, this comes up so many times and again. People say this is about the right of women to choose what women can do. That relies on us all agreeing with each other. If women are allowed to choose what a female space is, I'm allowed to choose just as much as you are.
Of course you can.
Yeah, and I say trans women are welcome.
So fine. That's your rules. If you want to set up a club over there, Zoe, that's your,
you've just talked for quite a long time. Secondly, again, you come back to this thing. I'm doing a disservice to the NHS. I'm gaslighting. I'm doing this. You've got to be able to accept that people can disagree and still be, not everybody calls themselves a feminist. That doesn't mean feminism is irrelevant. Not everybody in the NHS is good or bad. That doesn't mean that 2 points of view aren't completely acceptable. Not everybody thinks a woman-only space is this or that. You've got to be able to kind of, encompass a wide variety of views within a gender without thinking that that's a kind of threat of erasure, because it really, really isn't. And
I think really part of this is that we all have to agree to disagree, and we have to keep debating, keep talking.
I love disagreeing.
So do I, and it's wonderful to have all your comments. Thank you. Now, to prisons, because there's a lot of debate around whether males who transition to females should be sent to women's only prisons. We've seen cases like that of Isla Bryson, who was found guilty of rape and then sent to an all-female jail.
Is he or whatever? Is it the person that went to the female prisons and impregnated 2 women? I don't know whether that happened in Australia. Is she the same person, or in Canada? I can't really remember.
There's also the case of Karen White, who sexually assaulted 2 women while in custody.
Whoa!
Again, after being sent to an all-female jail. Sally,
Damn.
let's bring you in again. What do you make of this?
Well, you have Isla Bryson, Karen White, who obviously get most of the attention. And I think it skews the public perception of actually what is happening. Mm-hmm. There will be plenty of trans women and trans men who are certainly not a threat to either population. But as both of you have just touched on, the debate is so polarized. We're not actually having a real discussion about keeping trans people safe, women safe in prison, and men safe. we need to calm down. Everybody on both sides of the debate needs to calm down and actually start coming up with some workable solutions rather than all the mudslinging which goes on.
Which is a bit of a smokescreen sometimes as well with the mudding. Zoe, I know you've written about this topic. You've written a brilliant article about this. What's your thoughts on
I mean,
this?
you know, this is absolutely classic gaslighting. In fact, the idea of like that there's a huge population of trans women prisoners in the female estate, and they pose this terrible threat to women in the female estate is completely fanciful. No female prisoners have been attacked by anybody trans since 2019, but between 2017 and 2020, there were these 7 assaults involving a trans prisoner. And everybody's like, well, that means trans prisoners are 35,000 times more likely to commit assault because there aren't very many in the prison estate to begin with. In fact, 5 of them were Karen White. She only got convicted of 2 of them. The other 3 lie on her file because most likely because
he looks like a serial killer. I'm getting serial killer vibes. Am I the only one? Jesus.
defense and the prosecution agreed not to pursue them because her sentence was already going to be life. The same year Karen White committed those assaults was the highest suicide rate in the women's estate on record. So if you're serious about women's prisons, if you're serious about women in prison and what kind of a time they're having, you need to look in the round. You can't just fixate on this problem, which is by no means the greatest problem anybody faces.
But this isn't what it's about. I don't care if you committed tax fraud or if you beheaded someone or if you were a sex offender. If you have a male body, if you are whatever the lingo is I'm supposed to use, if you are male, it doesn't matter what you define yourself as, what you identify as, then you should not be in a women's space like a women's prison, because it isn't about assault. It's about dignity. It's about privacy. It's about the kind of quality of life that the women in that prison are living. I mean,
but that's already the rule.
Hang on a second. God forbid I've ever end up behind bars. But I can imagine that if I did, I probably would, in the difficulty that Zoe has outlined, that female and male prisoners face, having their freedom taken away from them, dealing with all of that, having to then also have the solidarity that you might find between women and maybe the lives that you've had, the connections you've had, the experiences you've shared, not impinged upon, but affected by the presence of a male, as somebody who is a male, with all the risks that might cause that are aside from rape or sexual assault, like getting pregnant. I mean, just think about what this actually entails.
Come on,
hang on a second. Let me finish.
You're actually wrong about the rules. That's what's so
I'm
annoying.
not
Ella have a say, and then Zoe.
I'm not wrong about the rules.
They changed in 2019.
Well, if
you're not allowed in the female estate with a penis.
Well, if we're talking about this is the other funny thing.
Everybody always. Well, that's boring.
Everybody.
So, if you chop off your penis, now you can be allowed in the female space. Like, is this for real? Like, are we? Okay, I'm gonna just after the video, I'll give my thoughts. This is
saying it's boring talking about facts, but then people
you just
say,
don't want to.
What about if we just, what's the big problem? They get put in solitary confinement, or what's the big problem? They never ever see anyone. Why is it that the discussion? Let's ask this question: why is it the discussion always that women have to budge up and make space? But I think there's something a bit inhumane about the way in which we are, diminishing the impact that it might have on female prisoners by having the presence of a male body in there, not because of fear, not because that person might be the mildest person in the world, but because of what it says about privacy and dignity. And also, I think this is the most crucial thing, our understanding that there are differences between men and women, and blowing that fact out of the water by just saying, what's the problem here? Throw them all in together.
Okay, no, wait.
It's a bit
Come on.
ridiculous.
I mean, that wasn't right.
Just in the interest of broadcasting accuracy, let's just say since 2019, you haven't been allowed to go into the women's estate if you haven't medically transitioned. So we're having this kind of completely pointless.
I'm talking about people who have medically transitioning does not make you a woman.
Oh, okay, well,
that's a much bigger conversation.
Facts. Like, okay.
It's not a bigger conversation. It's actually a smaller conversation, but it's not this conversation.
Let's do a field trip to a female prison together, and then we can come back.
Well, I've been to
And-
loads
and-
of female
well,
prisons and male prisons.
You're the authority on the female prison.
Who's the
Let's do a
authority
field
on
trip
what a
together, and
woman
we can
is?
discuss
Yeah.
this
Well, yeah.
next time.
If you go under the knife, you're a woman,
Right.
apparently.
Moving on.
That was a good one. That was a good one. Yeah, I mean, some people believe that. Yeah, as long as you start chopping off body parts, that makes you a woman. You know, you chop off your willy. You know, yeah, you are now a woman. You slap breast on yourself. You put on breast on yourself. Yeah, that you are sure a woman. This is crazy. This is just insane. And this is a feminist talking this nonsense.
Move
Ed,
on.
come on.
We're getting very heated here, and for good reason. There's also a debate around toilets, changing rooms too. Sally, we fought very hard as women for some of these spaces. Do you think now, as Ella just said, we're kind of having to shift aside to make room for other people?
Well, you can include women's refuges, rape crisis centres when under that umbrella. I mean, the Equalities, Health and Human Rights Commissions recently clarified the rules on this and said organisations can refuse trans entry if they're worried about privacy being compromised, causing trauma, health and safety issues. So we already have the structure in place for organisations to be able to say, sorry, this actually needs to remain a single sex area in order to protect those people.
Yeah.
So we are slowly starting to evolve and starting to be able to cope with the complexes around this issue. And I think certainly if women feel unsafe, then trans women should not be allowed in.
Yeah. And there's also the threat, Zoe, that perhaps, some individuals might masquerade as trans to gain access to places where women are incredibly vulnerable, like you just said, in women's refuges.
I just think you
what's
lot
your
are
thoughts?
being played, honestly. I mean, 20 years ago, we never cared about who used what toilet. We've all been in a
Because 20 years ago, there's never been a trend of people just transitioning, putting on wigs and dresses and claiming that they are women and walking around trying to go into men and female spaces. There have never been a trend of that. There's never been a rise of that 20 years ago. There was never 20 years ago, the word transgenderism was something that you heard in school, probably in college. It wasn't something that you heard on social media. Well, there wasn't social media back then, but it's not something you heard on the news, on the newspapers. No, it was something that you're taught in school. It was something that is very, very academic. Now it's all over the place, everywhere. When you step outside your house, that's all you see. That's all you hear. Pride, trans, all this nonsense. So yeah, 20 years ago was a different time.
women's toilet, right? They're in cubicles. What's it to you who's in the next cubicle? Nobody ever cared. Did you ever go on a plane and go, oh, I can't go in there. There's a man going in that one.
Well, you don't just go into a toilet to have a piss. You don't just
Well,
go
what do you
into.
do?
I mean, you put your lipstick on at the mirror. You might ask someone for a tampon when you're growing up, when you're in school. I mean, it's a bit disgusting, but we used to eat our lunch in the toilet and talk about boys. It's
With a safe space for
it's a place where, particularly as you're a young
you need
person,
to be safe to eat your lunch now.
It's not about being safe. This is where I'll agree with you. I actually think the discussion is shouldn't be about safety first and foremost, because that is perpetuating a myth that anyone who decides to change their gender is a threat, and I don't think that's true.
The debate around sport and transgender athletes has really raised a lot of concern. We've seen trans women such as Leah Thomas competing against and beating female athletes. But when it comes to trans men, it can be argued that they actually present
How
a
is
much
this a
more
girl?
threat to male athletes. Only a week or so ago, British Cycling banned transgender women from riding in the female category of the sport in favour of new open categories for male and trans athletes. Ella, what do you make of this?
Look, there are certain things in life that, like it or not, are true. And one of them is, for example, my husband's always going to beat me in an arm wrestle. It doesn't matter how much it affects my pride. It doesn't actually matter that I'm double his weight. It is one of those unfortunate biological facts. And in the realm of sporting, the reason why we have separated men and women is because there are these, aside from a few outliers, some very exceptional women and very mediocre men. For the most part, we understand that men can jump higher, run faster. And so for fairness for women, we created a separate category so that we're not always losing to men. That seems to me to be pretty sensible.
The reason there are separate categories for men and women is that when women competed openly with men, they were too good. This is actually why women's football was abolished by the Football Association.
Did I hear her? The reason why. This chick is gonna be clipped up. This is gonna be a meme. I swear to God, this is gonna be a meme. This is the most ridiculous. This woman is insane. This is what I'm telling you. All feminists, like, not jobs, not jobs. You have 15-year-old boys slapping up U.S. after they won the women's U.S. team, after they won the World Cup. They slapped them up. Is it 4-0 or 4-1? 15-year-old boys. Serena Williams losing to a man ranked in the 100 and something. I don't know. Yeah, 100 and something. Yeah, and the guy was drunk. This woman is in. Okay. Feminists. Why am I even shocked by the things she's saying? I swear to God.
In the 20s was because women were too good. And if you put them on the same team, men got upset. And that has been the evolution of male and female sports peeling apart.
That's a
you look very skeptical, but it's true. I mean, honestly, go back to the...
But you look at biologic. I absolutely 100% agree that trans people should be treated equally. However, biologically, we are not equal.
Nobody's saying we're exactly the same. But actually,
if you have trans women, they have so much higher levels of testosterone. They are stronger. They are faster.
That's actually not,
they are
that's
always
not true.
If
It's
you
not true. No, it's really not, because actually you can't compete in the female category until you've got testosterone levels below a certain level, which I know you both know.
When you go through puberty, your bones grow a certain way differently.
Okay,
your chest
Ella,
broadens out.
That is
scientific fact. I can see you're both
science.
really wedded to the idea that all men are going to be better than all women at sport, but it's just not true.
They might not be as skillful in certain
wedded to
sports.
the idea.
However,
We
they
know
are
the fact.
stronger and they are faster.
What you've seen,
and that is
like
a biological
one picture
fact.
of a trans cyclist with really big thighs, and you're like, oh well, all men are always gonna
we're
trans
idiots.
women.
We've been hoodwinked.
But it
we're
is,
idiots.
Zoe, can I just say one thing?
We're not engaging. Yeah.
I would just like to say it is a fact. If you took the top female athletes for most sports,
well, no, not most
and
sports,
recorded their times, their achievements, there would still be thousands of male athletes who would be beating them.
We're gonna move on. These are really brilliant debates. I think we can just keep going for hours.
Okay, yeah, this is ridiculous. Like, listening to this woman talk, I swear, this is just, yeah. Is she serious with this? Like, is she really serious with this? Oh my God. Feminism is a poison. Feminism is like, words can't even describe. Could you imagine you're having a daughter that thinks this way, a sister that thinks this way? Could you imagine bringing home a woman, a wife into your house that thinks this way? Jesus Christ. Jesus. I mean, I liked the woman in the middle. She had a based take on this trans stuff. I don't know if I've seen her before. Maybe I have. But this was actually, it wasn't the video I thought it was gonna be. I thought it was just gonna be some white feminists, rambling, liberals rambling. And it wasn't. Yeah, they had a little bit of based women in there. I mean, the other one on the far left, she's kind of like, yeah. But the one on the middle, yeah, I like her takes. Yeah, but the one on the far right, Jesus Christ, she's like a nut job. Anyway, if you like the video, please remember to hit that like button or hit the dislike button if you don't like it, and subscribe. Yeah, have a good night.